Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast, a show created to be your go-to source for straightforward retirement advice. Best of all, it is presented in a language that you can understand. Here's your host, certified financial planner, Greg Gonzalez.
Hey, welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm Greg Gonzalez. Thanks for joining me today. This is episode number 202, first episode of 2026. So with this episode, I wanted to talk about changes for the year 2026, not only to 401k plans, Roth IRAs, Medicare, Social Security, a lot of different changes. Your taxes, because of the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill in 2025. So we're going to talk about all those changes on this episode, and then we'll end the episode with some questions. It's been a while since we've done some listener questions. We've had a lot submitted, especially in Q4 of last year. And as we prepare for the next episode, which we'll release here in a couple weeks, episode number 203, we're going to go over some retirement frequently asked questions. And what we've done is we've looked at all the questions that have been asked or submitted to our firm, which is called Retire Strong Financial Advisors. So this is introduction meetings. This is people emailing in questions or going to our website and submitting questions. This is current client questions they have about retirement. So everything from should I be doing Roth conversions to do I have enough money to retire successfully, or how much money do I need to have saved to be able to retire? How much can I spend in retirement? We're trying to compile a list of all the questions that people come to the table with that are on their mind as they think about retirement. We're going to present that list to you on the next episode, episode number 203. And these questions have come from the last several years, not just the last couple months. And I think that's going to be really special because our firm, we specialize in working with people 50 and over as they plan for a successful retirement. So it's really neat, having that specialty in hearing all these different questions. And I'm sure you've been in a presentation before, you've worked with somebody maybe that has asked a very, very good question, and you sat back and said, man, that was a good question. That's what we hope to bring to the table on the next episode, episode number 203. And hopefully we can share with you some questions that maybe you haven't thought about that could really, really help you as you plan for your own retirement. Maybe there's some questions that other people are asking for their own benefit that'll also help you. So that's what we're working on right now, and check back for that next episode. If you're a new listener, I would invite you to go to our website, retirestrongfa.com. There's a resources tab with free resources that you can download, like our secret sauce to retirement, our tax planning guide. Our 2026 market outlook is now live. For those people that are curious, what's upcoming for 2026 as far as a market outlook? What are the expectations? This is a very in-depth guide, which you can download on our website, retirestrongfa.com. And if you're one of those people that is interviewing different fiduciary advisors to see who might be a good fit to hire and partner with as you plan for your own successful retirement, there's a forum on our website called Get Started, and you can start the conversation that way with us. And together we can see if we're going to be a good fit to work with you. Again, the website is in the show notes, retirestrongfa.com. Check out our resources. Send in your questions, please. Send in your questions you have about retirement. We will certainly get back with you, and we might even use your question on the next episode as we go through those questions about retirement that people have. Let's jump into today's episode, which is changes coming in 2026. Maybe these changes you've gotten emails about, maybe these changes you haven't even heard about yet, but we wanted to bring them to your attention because they will impact you in some way. I'm going to start off with the changes to Social Security, like the cost of living. Again, we talked about that in, I believe, October is when that was announced. The cost of living adjustment for those people that are collecting Social Security is 2.8%. So that will go into effect on your January 2026 Social Security check. However, don't get too excited because that doesn't necessarily mean that your Social Security check is going to get a 2.8% raise. Because if you're on Medicare, your Medicare Part B premium, and again, it's income based. So some people hear, oh, my Medicare Part B premium is a lot more than you're talking about. Because it's income based, it's tiered, right? So at the lowest level, Part B premium in 2025 was $185 a month, which if you're collecting Social Security and you're on Medicare, that Part B premium comes right out of your Social Security check, $185. It went up for 2026, 9.67%. It's going up to $202.90. So the lesson here is, as we have talked about over and over again, Medicare tends to go up and has, on average, the last 20 years, about 5% per year. So I think it's wise to continue to expect that Medicare increases to the cost of Medicare are going to be much higher than like the average inflation or raise that you might get on a cost of living adjustment on your Social Security check. And there's a lot of studies out there that show that taxes and medical costs will be two of your highest costs in retirement. So those were two quick changes to Social Security, going up by 2.8%. And then your Medicare Part B premium, again, went up 9.67%. Let's talk about changes to 401ks, to IRAs, Roth IRAs. We've had maybe a half a dozen to a dozen clients that have emailed us and said, hey, I got this email from the 401k company at work. I don't understand it. What does it mean? Let's start with the easy ones, the easy changes, and that's changes to the maximum contribution limit for 2026 for like a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. If you're over 50 in 2026, the new contribution limit is $8,600. Now, last year in 2025, it was $8,000. So what happened was there's a standard contribution limit for those people that are under 50 of $7,500. And they allow you, if you're over 50, you get what's called a catch-up contribution limit of $1,100. So they've changed it. Now for 2026, you can contribute. Again, there's income limitations that you need to be aware of for both Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs. And the rules, you need to make sure that you qualify, and contributing to either of them is going to be in your best interest. But assuming it is and you qualify, again, over 50 for 2026, the new contribution limit is $8,600. So they're giving you an extra $600 over 2025 that you can put in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And for those people that are utilizing a backdoor Roth IRA, again, you can still do so in 2026. The new limit is $8,600 if you're over 50. Okay, now let's talk about 401ks, 403bs, or 457 plans. The contribution limits are going up for 2026. And if you're over 50, the contribution limit is now $32,500. If you're under 50, it is $24,500. So there's what's called a catch-up contribution of $8,000, which if you add $8,000 to $24,500, you get to the limit of $32,500. And to make it even more complicated, they say if you are between the ages of 60 and 63 at the end of 2026, you have what's called a super catch-up contribution, which means that your catch-up contribution instead of $8,000 is $11,250. So your total contribution for that year is $35,750. And I've said this on previous podcasts, I wish they just made it 60 or over as far as this super catch-up, because it really just confuses a lot of people. And okay, once you're 64 years old, you can actually contribute less to your 401k than when you were 63. It just makes no sense. and it's an extra $3,250 is all. But that's something to keep in mind if you will be between the ages of 60 and 63 in 2026. You do have that super catch-up contribution, which a lot of people don't know about. Now, this is something, next I'm going to cover this. This is something brand new for 2026, and this went into effect January 1st of 2026. And so this says, this is part of the Secure Act 2.0 mandate that said, if you earned $150,000 in FICA wages in the prior year, which is 2025, you will need to make your catch-up contributions to your 401k in Roth dollars. And you might be thinking, well, I don't have a Roth 401k. I don't have any money in the Roth 401k. Well, you're about to. So let me paint the picture and make sure you understand this new rule. So you would have had to be impacted by this. You would have had to make $150,000 in 2025 in FICA wages. So think to yourself, does that apply to you? Did you make $150,000 or more last year? If you did not, this will not impact you whatsoever. But let's consider someone, and I'm just going to make this up. Let's say they're 65 years old. They made $200,000 last year in 2025. They're maxing out their 401k. They were planning on maxing out their 401k this year in 2026. And again, that was composed of a $24,500 contribution. And then they get an additional $8,000 as a catch-up contribution because they're over 50. And the total contribution they're putting in the 401k was a combination of the two. It's $32,500. And so we have this person that was making $200,000 and planning on maxing out with $32,500 in the pre-tax 401k, because that's what they always did, because you get the tax deduction. And your contribution to that pre-tax 401k, which is $32,500, that reduces your taxable income for the year. Well, this new law says that, okay, you can still put in the contribution limit, the $24,500, the base limit for those people under 50. But the catch-up contribution, that additional $8,000 that you get to contribute to your 401k because you're over 50, that must go to your Roth 401k. So meaning you don't get the tax deduction on that last $8,000 that you contribute to the 401k. It goes in the Roth bucket. So there's a lot of people out there that if they're maxing out, if they're over 50 and they're maxing out their 401ks and they made $150,000 or more last year in 2025, now they're going to be forced to put that catch-up limit, which is $8,000 in 2026, into a Roth 401k. And if someone happens to be between the ages of 60 and 63, that catch-up limit, instead of $8,000, it's $11,250. And then when you turn 64, it goes back down to $8,000, as I talked about. Again, this only impacts people that earned $150,000 or more last year in 2025. So what is Congress trying to do here? Why was this put into place? And this is just my opinion, so take that for what it's worth. But we're $39 trillion in debt. And if you're the government and you're saying, okay, we need more tax dollars coming in, one way to do it is to limit what people can put into a retirement account on a pre-tax basis. And dollar for dollar, the higher income people are in higher tax brackets. So if you limit those people, they're going to pay you a higher marginal tax rate than the lower income people. So that's why they chose to only limit or restrict the people making $150,000 or more, which can be deemed higher income people. For example, if you had a couple and they were both spouses were making $150,000 each, that's $300,000 combined. They're in the 24% marginal bracket. And if they're putting money into a pre-tax 401k, they're saving 24% federal taxes by contributing to that pre-tax 401k. So if you're in this camp, if you made $150,000 or more last year, consider how this is going to impact you if you're maxing out your 401k. And I would contact the custodian of your 401k. And I'll share a quick story. In December, our team did a conference call with a client, a higher income earning client, because we were trying to get ahead of this and we were trying to ask these questions. And this conference call was with Fidelity, which is one of the largest 401k providers in the country right now. And we were asking them how this is going to impact payroll and how they go on the 401k portal and make these decisions. And the person that we spoke with said, I know it goes into effect on January 1st, but we haven't even got all the bugs worked out administratively yet. So we're still trying to figure out how this is going to work because this is such a brand new law. And we were kind of shocked by that because this conference call was being held in December for a law that needed to go into effect January 1st. So they had less than a month, and this is Fidelity's 401k team. They're still trying to figure this out. And I can't imagine that they're the only 401k provider out there that is still trying to figure things out with this new law. Like I said, we had several clients forward emails that they had received from their 401k provider alerting them of this change. But just keep in mind that if you're in that camp and you earned $150,000 or more in 2025, and you plan to contribute more than $24,500 to your 401k in 2026, this will impact you. Like I said, this is brand new. The rule is different depending on how much you earned in 2025. That will dictate whether it impacts you or not and how much you contribute to your 401k. And personally, I don't like this rule. And this is why, because it limits your personal choices and your decision making. It forces you to put money into a Roth 401k, even if you don't want to, if you would prefer to put it in the pre-tax 401k, but you fall within this category of people that this applies to, you no longer have the choice of where your money goes, whether it's pre-tax 401k or Roth 401k. They're removing your ability to make your own decisions that you believe are in your best interest. I think we can all agree that, when the government's telling us, hey, we're limiting your options or choices here moving forward, it's generally speaking a bad news, right? If they're giving you more choices, that generally speaking, I think we can all agree that's a positive. So then, as I was thinking about this more, and I did a little research, there are some 401k providers, some companies that offer 401ks where a Roth 401k is not available. It's not offered. The company makes that call. So if your company doesn't offer a Roth 401k and you fall within this category, guess what? That catch-up contribution of $8,000, you no longer get to contribute to your 401k unless your company rolls out the Roth 401k option. Now, that's less than 10% of companies from the reading and the research that I've done. It's less than 10% of companies that don't offer a Roth 401k option. But I'm just saying companies are not forced to offer the Roth 401k at this point. And I wanted to switch gears here, talking about another change that I think that's going to impact a lot of people in 2026 as far as their tax planning. And this isn't a huge change, but I think it will help people out there. If you plan on filing with a standard deduction in 2026, starting in 2026, they are now allowing you to claim up to $1,000 for single filers and $2,000 for joint filers for cash gifts to qualified charities. So that's an additional deduction that you can record and you can benefit from, even if you file a standard deduction. You didn't used to be able to do this, but now you can use this deduction. Maybe you give $1,000 or $2,000 to the United Way or the Humane Society, or maybe you do your tithing at church. This is an extra deduction that you can claim on your taxes. So hopefully this has been a good recap of some changes that are going into effect in 2026. We are updating our 2026 tax guide, which when it's available, I'll make an announcement and it will be available on our website, which is linked in the show notes. We update that tax guide every single year and offer it for free. Okay, let's jump into some listener questions. We got a couple of them lined up that I think are really, really good questions. It's always good to hear from listeners what's on their mind, what they want to hear more of, or even less of. The first question was actually submitted through our website, and this person had watched a video on Retirement Made Easy on our YouTube channel, which if you just go to YouTube, there's a link in the show notes, but it's Retirement Made Easy YouTube channel. Just type in Retirement Made Easy, you'll find it. But in a video where I was describing target date funds and why I'm not a big fan of them. But this listener said that their target date fund in their 401k, it did fairly well in 2025. They wanted to know what was the reason it did so well. And lastly, am I going to change my opinion on target date funds? And lastly, is it a good idea to keep this target date fund going and all of their 401k money invested in this target date fund and just take regular withdrawals from this target date fund while they're retired? Is that a good strategy? So let's go over this. And I don't know if this person was trying to dig at me or not. I keep this anonymous, and it's okay if they were. But target date funds, the concept behind them is the older you get, the more conservative they become. And so then they shift basically from stocks to bonds because they deem bonds less risky than stocks. So every year as you get older, they will automatically adjust without you even knowing. And the concept of the retirement date, the target date, is the year in which you turn 65. So if you turn 65 in 2030, 4 years from now, then they would, by default, based on your age, your year of birth, they would have you invested in the 2030 retirement date fund. And I put a lot of time into that YouTube video on Retirement Made Easy, so you can check that out. I go into a lot more detail on this that I won't go into today. But to answer the first question, why did target retirement date funds do so well in 2025? There's two reasons, really. Number one, they tend to overweight the amount of money they have in stocks, and more specifically, international and emerging market stocks that are out of the US. That's just what they do, and they're really, really well known for that, is to have a good portion in international stocks, which the last 10 years have drastically underperformed the US stock market index. You would not believe. And I did another video on that showing the difference of the US stock market versus the international stock market the last 10, 15 years. And the difference is just mind-boggling. What happened in 2025? What happened in 2025 is a lot of, with these tariffs and the international markets, what these countries did internationally, there was a lot of stimulus going on. And if you remember last year, there was no stimulus here in the United States. So with all that stimulus going on abroad, the international stock markets, for the first time in a long time, actually outperformed the US stock market in 2025. In addition to that, US and international bonds, they actually did fairly well, all things considered, last year in 2025. And the US stock market did fairly well last year as well. So the stars sort of aligned for target date funds last year, and that's why they did so well. And the second question was, am I going to change my mind on target date funds? And I'm not going to. And this is why. I believe for someone that doesn't want to put a whole lot of time into investment decisions within their 401k and is not interested in hiring a professional to help them make those decisions, these target date funds are okay. And you can have pretty good results. I'm not going to argue that. But you're never going to be able to convince me that every 65-year-old should be invested. Their life savings within the 401k should be invested the same as every other 65-year-old out there. And the same goes for every 55-year-old. I don't think it's reasonable to say that every 55-year-old should be in a target date fund and should be invested exactly the same as every other 55-year-old out there. That, in my opinion, is way, way too cookie cutter. And it ignores way too much about ourselves as people, the goals we have, the risks that we choose to take or choose not to take, the investment preferences that we might have, the income that we need from our investments. None of that is taken into account. It simply says, okay, if you're this age, you get the same as everybody else your age. Can you imagine if you went to the car dealership and they said, okay, how old are you? Okay, yeah, you get this car because everybody else that's 60 gets this same car. You don't have a choice. That to me is nuts. And I think there's a better way. It has to do with understanding you as a person, your unique goals, preferences, the growth and income that you're expecting from your money. All of that needs to play a factor in the overall investment decision, not just, okay, you're this old, you get this fund. But certainly it is the easy way to go. You can have decent results. I'm not going to argue that. And the last question was, is it a good idea to just take withdrawals from that target date fund after you retire? If you keep your money in your 401k and then just set up systematic withdrawals. So let's say you want to take withdrawals every 2 weeks or once a month. That's how you support your lifestyle in retirement. Certainly that's an option. You can do that. I personally would take it a step further and stress test your results and really get a better understanding of how that target date fund will adjust over time. Meaning, when you're 65 and you retire, hypothetically, that fund is going to get more and more and more conservative as the years go by. Just because you're getting older, it is shifting more of your money into what they deem safer investments that have less risk, from stocks to bonds. I would argue that maybe that's not the best approach for you because you have no control over it, because it's done in the background kind of automatically. So it's really going to be up to you. It might be a good strategy that you're comfortable with and you like, but I would really, really encourage you to make sure, because there's a lot at stake. And just by doing that approach, implementing that approach, I think you might be unknowingly leaving a lot to chance. Personally, I would be much, much more comfortable and have a lot more confidence in like a bucket strategy, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast, and we'll include a link in the show notes. It's one of the most downloaded episodes. We use the Retire Strong bucket strategy, which is fairly specific, and we've done a lot of testing and research on it, and we have therefore a lot of confidence in it. And what it does is it spreads out your money so it's not all vested in one mutual fund or one investment. It breaks it out into buckets, and there's a reason for that. So not all your money's invested exactly the same. Not all your money is subject to the same amount of risk and potential return. So it really comes down to personal preference and what's going to give you the most confidence. And if that's a target date fund, I'm happy for you, but I still think that you could do better if you wanted to dig a little deeper and come up with a more sophisticated strategy that would ultimately attempt to give you a higher probability of success. But that's my thoughts. Now, the second question kind of ties into this a little bit, because I had someone that had mentioned to me just in a meeting. This was an introduction meeting with a podcast listener, and he said very simply, my money can last me 20 years. I asked, how do you know your money can last you 20 years? And he said, let's say I have $1 million, which he thought he did. And he said, okay, if I take $50,000 a year, if I withdraw $50,000 a year from that $1 million, it's going to last me 20 years. Then at the end of 20 years, I won't have any money left. But those withdrawals lasted me 20 years, $50,000 a year. And of course, I listened to this gentleman's way of thinking. And so, yeah, if you put $1 million in a mayonnaise jar and you took out $50,000 a year for 20 years, he's right. At the end of 50 years, the money would be gone. You'd have an empty mayonnaise jar. But what I had attempted to explain to him is that's not the way life works. So we've got inflation throughout the next 20 years that's going to go up. Some years it won't be very noticeable. Some years, like this past year in 2025, we saw ground beef go up 20%. I was reading an article in the New York Times. The price of 1 pound of ground beef is now national average $6.54, according to this article in the New York Times. That went up 20% in 2025 because now we have the smallest national cattle herd that we've had since 1952. Now, your overall grocery bill did not go up 20%. If you eat a fair amount of ground beef, it probably went up 3, 4, 5%. And if your insurance has gone up like mine has gone up, then you can say, okay, my other costs have gone up as well. So if we're spending that $50,000 per year for 20 years, I would argue, or I'd bring up the fact that probably your spending is going to go up simply because $50,000 is not going to buy as much stuff and goods and services as it did the prior year because of something like ground beef going up. Maybe restaurants raise their prices by 15% from the prior year. So the idea that one can spend an equal amount of money consistently for 20 years is just unrealistic. And then on top of that, you're going to have bigger ticket items that we run into, especially if you replace a vehicle like every 5 or 10 years, you have these big expenses that come up. If you're a homeowner, you might have an HVAC system that you need to replace, or it might be a new roof, or it might be gutters. It might be a driveway that you need to replace. If you have a basement, it might be a foundation issue. Maybe you go on a big trip one year. Maybe you have a daughter's wedding that you're paying for, and your expenses are a lot higher that year. Maybe you have a year where you don't do a whole lot. Maybe you spend less than the $50,000. And maybe then the next year you go on a big family vacation for a big celebration. Maybe it's a big birthday. Maybe it's an anniversary celebration. So that premise, that idea, I can do the math, and I know you can too do the math. $50,000, that's a 5% withdrawal on $1 million for 20 years. The money would be gone at the 20-year mark. Here's the thing. Nobody's going to do that. No one's going to put $1 million in a mayonnaise jar. And I don't think it would be prudent to do so either, because you're taking away the earnings ability of that money, of your life savings. And sure, by investing a portion of the 401k or the $1 million, yeah, there's going to be risks. It might be a stock market risk. It might be interest rate risk. The list goes on. But by just saying, okay, we're going to take no risk, we're going to earn no money, the damage that would do for the rest of your life. And really, we're not even considering any type of legacy goals that one might have, either to family, loved ones, charity. If that money's toast in 20 years, you can forget about any of those legacy goals. But getting back to his point, I mean, I get the idea that, hey, we want our money to last. And I would argue that 20 years is not long enough, and that a $50,000 stagnant withdrawal is not going to be enough, just because we've seen how much the cost of living goes up and up and up, and it just eats into us every single year. We need our money to continue to work. And I know that can be scary for people because they've got to be comfortable with the risk. And really what it boils down to is you've got to take an acceptable level of risk and invest it in a way that's going to give you the highest probability that money lasts longer than you do, because that's the goal. We can't have it run out in 20 years. Because if it's gone in 20 years, then you're living on a Social Security check, and that's it. Well, you might be lucky like some people and have a pension on top of the Social Security check. But my lesson here is I want you to conceptualize retirement. And this gentleman, I think I was able to really open up his eyes of what he thought retirement would look like, how it would play out, how long his money would last, beyond thinking about it surface level. Hey, if I take out 5% a year equally for 20 years, my money will last at least 20 years. That might be the case, but it's not realistic. That's not how retirement goes. Believe me, we've worked with dozens and dozens of people, and costs go up, as I indicated, and you need your money to last a lot longer than 20 years. And if retirement's a journey, I had someone even say that it's a long chess match. You got to come up with a better strategy so you can be victorious. So I hope this episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast has been helpful. If you're getting serious about retirement and want to talk to a retirement specialist, you can go to our website, retirestrongfa.com. We'd love to chat with you. I'll see you next time. And remember, always dream big.
Content in this material is for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. The content in this material does not necessarily reflect the views of LPL Financial. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific situation. Your results will vary. The hypothetical rates of return used do not reflect the deduction of fees and charges inherent to investing. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments might be appropriate for you, please consult your attorney, tax advisor, or financial planner prior to investing. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific investment. Your results may vary. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices mentioned are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance your overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect completely against market risk. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor. Fixed and variable annuities are suitable for long-term investing, such as retirement investing. Gains from tax-deferred investments are taxed as ordinary income upon withdrawal. Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals made prior to age 59.5 are subject to a 10% IRS penalty tax, and surrender charges may apply. Variable annuities are subject to market risk and may lose value. Riders are additional guarantee options that are available to an annuity or life insurance contract holder. While some riders are part of an existing contract, many others may carry additional fees, charges, and restrictions, and the policyholder should review their contract before purchasing. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor. Retire Strong Financial Advisors and LPL Financial are not endorsed by or affiliated with the United States Social Security Administration or any government agency. Retire Strong Financial Advisors and LPL Financial are not endorsed by or affiliated with the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services or any government agency.
Thank you for listening to the show today. check us out at our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And if you want some help from Greg, submit your questions at the bottom of the page or sign up for a 30-minute retirement coaching session with Greg. We'll see you next week.